Hey, this is Matthew with Bipolar. I'm not a psychologist, but I do play one on TV, or on the YouTube channel, or not actually playing a psychologist, but in today's video, we are going to look at the psychology of motivation. Let's take a look. In our last video, we looked at the importance of community, where we were saying that the community supporting a data culture is going to be successful when there are more people asking and answering questions and collaborating around the constructive and appropriate use of data. And as we were kicking off this series, we said that a data culture is defined by the behaviors that it promotes and encourages and the behaviors that it prohibits or punishes. A lot of this comes down to details, and a lot of it comes down to motivation. How do you actually encourage someone to do some things and to not do other things? How can you encourage people consistently to do the things that contribute to the data culture? Now, when we're talking about motivation, there are two primary ways that a human being, an adult, can be motivated to take actions, and particularly actions in the workplace. If you take a look at the slide here, you can see that I have a quote from Psychology Today. The link to that article is in the description of the video below. I really recommend taking a look because I am not a psychologist. Let me just emphasize this. But extrinsic motivation is the reason that we do work other than the joy of doing the work itself. And a lot of this comes down to, how do I get rewarded? How do I get paid? What is my bonus? What is the reason that I am actually in this job in the first place? These are extrinsic motivators. When I'm thinking about the work that I do on a day-to-day basis, there are some things that I do not because I like them, not because I see the inherent value in them. I do them because it's my job. And this, in many ways, is what an extrinsic motivator is. My employer, my manager, my boss, my organization is saying, if you do these things, you will get paid. If you don't do these things, you will get fired. If you're doing these things, you will get a bigger bonus or you will get a commission. These are the traditional motivating factors for people at work. But this isn't what really drives people. This isn't what makes people want to do something or encourages a specific behavior other than those things that they are required to do. The other type of motivation is intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation are those things that you do because you like to do it. I love the way that this Psychology Today article describes this. It's the love of the game. There are some things that you do because they're challenging, because they're fun. You would do this outside of work even if you weren't getting paid to do it at work. And maybe you would do it outside of work for free after you do it for work, getting paid for it. You find it satisfying to do those things. Now, it's hard to find a way to make somebody like things if they don't already like them, right? So similar to the extrinsic motivation, where it's hard to say in general, hey, do these things and get a raise, or do these things and get a bigger bonus. That's more of a top-down approach. It's also hard to say for people in general, here are the ways that you can structure activities or motivate through a system to get more people to do it because they think that it's fun, or so you would think. That same Psychology Today article mentions an area of study known as job characteristic theory. And scientists, psychologists back in the 70s, if I remember the date correctly, they identified 5 different characteristics that make work inherently more intrinsically motivating. So if work has these characteristics, it represents those things that make it more likely that more people will want to do it for the sake of doing it. And the first one, you take a look at my little Venn diagram in the middle there, the first one is skill variety. If I do different things at different times, I'm more likely to be motivated and presumably less likely to be bored. The other one, the next one, is task identity. So task identity is basically that as an individual contributor, I can see how the work that I put in fits into the effort as a whole. Even if I'm only doing one small part of it, if I know that my work is a vital aspect of the broader whole that is important to the organization, that's really important. So that is another intrinsic motivator. I'm making a difference. The third part of that Venn diagram in the middle is a concept known as task significance. It's not just that my work is contributing to the work of the organization or the work of the team, it's that the work that I'm doing is making a difference for people. My effort, my task, my job, my work day to day, even if it's boring, even if it's repetitive, even if I don't get to see the big picture, I know that it's making a difference and that it's making people's lives better. It's making the world better. There's a lot of emphasis on my ability to empathize as a human or relate as a human being to the impact that my work is making on the world as a whole, or maybe just on my little part of the world. And in addition to these three characteristics in the middle, there are also two additional contributing factors that complement these three core characteristics. One of them is autonomy. People are more likely to be motivated if they get to choose how they solve the problems that they need to solve. And this is probably not going to come as any surprise to you, but if you have a micromanager who tells you, do this thing, and then do this thing, and then do this thing, and you get all of these granular instructions, that's not very motivating. You have no control, whereas if you have a manager that assigns you a goal to achieve, we need to hit this target, we need to do these things or achieve this end state, and you have the ability to choose how you structure your day, when you work, what specific tasks you are actually executing on to achieve that goal. That degree of autonomy is another inherent intrinsic motivator for many people. And the final aspect of this diagram is feedback. If you can consistently and regularly receive feedback on your work to understand what you're doing well, where there are areas to improve, and either the praise or the impact statement, so knowing that your work made this difference or that your work is exceeding expectations or even meeting expectations, this also motivates people to do the things that they need to do. And if we think about all of these as a whole, in one way, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? These are the things that as information professionals or data professionals, we can probably look at these factors and the amplifiers, the Venn diagram in the middle and the arrows on the side, and see those same motivating factors reflected in our work either today or our career in general. The bad boss didn't give us autonomy, the good boss did. The successful role where we stayed and made a difference gave us a lot of feedback, and the roles where we moved on sooner rather than later, we didn't get that feedback. We didn't see where it was contributing. So surprisingly, or perhaps not, task significance is one of the most significant intrinsic motivators in the workplace. Knowing that the work that you're doing is important, that it makes a difference, it makes more people more likely to do the things that they need to do to contribute where otherwise they might not. People like to do things that contribute to the whole and that make others' lives better. Obviously, there are exceptions, but in general, this is how people work. You want to give water to the dog, even if you know that you might need some of that water yourself. You feel better for doing it, even though no one's paying you to do it, and you may have paid for that bottle of water yourself. It still feels good to help, and that is something that can contribute both to the community and to the data culture that the community supports. During our last video, talking about community, we talked about recognition and reward. I want to go back to that again. Think about feedback. Think about autonomy. Think about that task significance. And now think about the ways that a data expert or a data source expert or a subject matter expert can contribute to a community, and knowing that when they answer a question, when they share a resource, when they provide documentation or metadata or guidance or creating a data flow or other reusable asset, if they see the work and never see what it does, if they see the work and never have that loop closed so that they know that they saved somebody a week of unnecessary effort because of the work that they've done, these things motivate them to come back and do it again. You say thank you. You say thank you up their reporting chain, and you demonstrate the impact for how their work has made a bigger difference. This is more likely to get them to contribute. And when we think about the culture as a whole, and we think about the ways that we want to encourage people to contribute, think about these motivating factors. If there is something that you want people to do where they need to put in effort and they're not going to get paid for it, so it's not a core part of their job, right? It's the tangential work that supports the culture as a whole and not their day-to-day task. You need to think about how to motivate them if you don't have an extrinsic motivator, if you don't have a financial reward to offer. Think explicitly up front, how do you make sure that they know where their little steps fit into the bigger step? How do you make sure that they can choose how they contribute or the ways that they contribute? How do you let them know that their work is helping others across the organization? And how do you make sure that they can get that feedback and that ongoing recognition? These are all things that we can each do either as a core contributor to the community and the center of excellence, or as a member of the data culture trying to ensure that our organization and the culture that we're building is moving in that positive direction. It's also worth mentioning, of course, there's a lot of variation. There are some people that are easier to motivate than others. There are some people that will never be intrinsically motivated for things at work because it's just not how they work. So you need to be flexible, and you need to consider that human psychological dimension to all of these different factors. If there's something that you need people to do for your efforts building a data culture to be successful, you need to think about the different ways that you can motivate them, either through structural, organizational changes, where there can be extrinsic motivation through financial or other meaningful external rewards, or through intrinsic motivation, by taking advantage of the way that people work to drive for positive change that benefits not just them, but the organization as a whole. And I do want to emphasize, I am not an expert on this or much of anything. So when it comes to this motivation, this video should simply be the first step to investigate and to learn more about this area or this topic as a broad area of learning. I've included a few links in the description below. They may be able to get you started, but do keep in mind, of all of the things that we deal with as data professionals, the people are the hardest and the most complex to get right reliably over time. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was valuable. Please let me know in the comments. Love to hear what you think. We'll see you next time. Hey, this is Matthew with Bipolar. I'm not a psychologist, but I do play one on TV. Oh, I'm sorry, my producer is letting me know that this is not TV, this is a YouTube channel. Also, that she prefers to be called a good kitty and not a producer. Oh, who is a good producer? Is it Maggie? It is Maggie. In any event, today we're going to be talking about the psychology of motivation. Time to go, little kitty. You be good. that same Psychology Today article calls up an area of study known as, God damn it, I looked at it on the slide like 20 seconds ago. There we go. Job characteristic theory. Why can't I remember the word characteristic?